Hey guys, Dustin here. Welcome to another episode of Horroritis. So today we're talking about The Babysitter from 2017. Now, as always, there will be spoilers, so if you haven't seen The Babysitter, it is a Netflix original, so it's on Netflix right now. You can go check it out and then come back and watch this video. What I'm going to do, what I've been trying to do, is I'm going to give you the basic plot without giving too much away, and then definitely go into some spoilers after that. So if you want to watch the first half of the video, you should be fairly safe. So watch at your own risk. So the movie is centered around a boy named Cole. And Cole is like overprotected by his parents. And, you know, he's kind of a nerdy, wimpy kid who gets bullied and picked on all the time. And the only thing he's really got going for him is his babysitter. And even though he's like 10 or 12 or 11, 13, somewhere around there, he still has a babysitter. And she's like the only person who really seems to understand him. And she's cool and smart. And, you know, she's basically everything that he wants out of another person. So he like idolizes her, but at the same time, he's crazy attracted to her. So one weekend while his parents are out of town and his babysitter B comes over, they hang out and they eat junk food and they do this and that, and they just pretty much, you know, have a great day. Then at one point in time they realize it's super late and he's got to go to bed, and so he decides that night though that he's gonna pretend to go to bed and he's gonna stay up and see what his babysitter does after he goes to sleep, because earlier that day with a girl in his class, they had been discussing, you know, that she probably has her boyfriend come over and they have sex or something. So him being curious, he decides he's going to stay up and see what she's doing. So he sneaks out of his room and sees her and a group of her friends sitting in a circle playing Spin the Bottle. And, you know, it's like truth or dare type stuff. And eventually they dare B to kiss everybody in the circle. And so it's like a group of people. You've got like the jock and the cheerleader and, you know, the funny black guy. And B basically goes around and kisses every one of them. And then there's this random nerdy guy who doesn't really seem to fit into the group. And, you know, he's visibly nervous when she gets to him to give him a kiss. So she stands him up and she gets real close. And as she goes up to kiss him, she slams two daggers right into the top of his head. And as it turns out, B and her friends are in a satanic cult. They realize Cole's seen this, so now they have to kill Cole, and he has to spend the rest of the night basically surviving. It's your typical slasher type movie. It's got the slasher movie framework, but there's bits and pieces of all these other horror movies, and like every horror movie trope you can think of, all the way from the stereotypical group of teenagers to, you know, one killer being a slow walking whatever, but yet being able to pop out and attack whenever, and you know, all the way down to just one person trying to survive all through the night. You know, there's so many throwbacks to just horror movie tropes that it almost feels like it's making fun of horror movies, when in reality I really think that this movie is paying homage to them, because it feels like, you know, it's a horror comedy straight up, but it feels like where it's making fun of horror, it's doing it in such a way that you can see that McG, the director, he seems to know the horror genre. I mean, even though he hasn't really directed too much horror, I think, I know he's produced some Supernatural, and he directed Charlie's Angels, and he was a producer on the TV show Chuck. But, you know, other than that, I can't really think of anything horror that he's done, but he seems to understand what, you know, seems to have a general grasp on the genre, because the way that they do, you know, some of the kills and the blood and the tropes, you know, you can kind of tell that it comes from a place of love, even though it's kind of tongue-in-cheek, and you know, they're not really trying to make fun of the genre, but there's still, you know, they're tropes that we all understand are tropes and are overdone, and that any one of us could pick out of a movie at any point in time, that we're watching and be like, oh, I've seen that, or that's from Nightmare on Elm Street or whatever. So, I mean, that's basically what this movie is. It's just one big, oh, I've seen that before. Oh, that's kind of funny. And, add on top of that some humor and a whole lot of blood, and you've got The Babysitter. Now, before you watch this, you have to realize that this movie, or at least a chunk of this movie, is basically like 4 teenage boys. There's the girls are very sexualized. There's no nudity or anything, but the girls are very sexualized, and this is a lot of the stuff seems like the core audience would be teenagers or young adults or whatever. Once they kill the nerdy guy in the circle, then it kind of becomes a horror movie. But right up until then, from the beginning to, I'd say, about a half hour in, you're kind of looking almost like something that would look like a teen romp comedy thing. And then right there, right about the half hour mark, is where it turns into a horror movie. And like I said, everything here is done, tongue-in-cheek, and it's not like, stupid funny, but it's, it's funny, and it's kind of slapsticky in some places. But yeah, like I said, everything here, it's done well, and it's a joke, but it's not like a bad joke, and they're not really making fun of anything that's coming from, a place of respect, it seems like. But there are some things that really just kind of irk me. And of course, it's tropes that we've seen a million times. But we start the movie, this kid is completely inept in everything except, I guess, general science and school stuff. So throughout this movie, he suddenly becomes proficient at surviving, which, I mean, I guess somewhere inside people there's a general will to live, or drive to survive. But like, this kid is either ridiculously lucky or deceptively competent. He gets way too lucky way too often. It's almost like he's a survival savant of some sort. It just, the way that everything that comes at him, he somehow manages to get away relatively unscathed while killing somebody else who's trying to kill him, is just, I mean, the word unrealistic, I don't want to use it with a movie like this because all sorts of stuff in this movie is unrealistic. But, yeah, it's one of the things I noticed is that he's just way too good at surviving and hardly gets beaten down at all by any of the multiple people trying to kill him. In fact, I think he takes more damage from the neighborhood bully than any of the Satanist cult members who are actually trying to end his life. Another thing that I found kind of off-putting, I guess, is that every so often they flash these animated words up on the screen. Like, as soon as he finds out that they're killing people, it pops up, words across the screen. I guess it's supposed to show you that he's, kind of flabbergasted by the whole thing, but you didn't really need that. You could tell that he was seriously surprised and thrown off and terrified completely, because the kid that plays Cole is actually a fairly decent actor, so he could pull that off, no problem. Another time he finds a big bottle rocket, fireworks, and it flashes up on the screen. Hell yeah. Like, we didn't need that, and it's kind of, it doesn't seem to fit the rest of the movie. Also, a lot of times the perspective will switch from third person to first person, and that can be off-putting as well. It's not terrible. I mean, obviously it's a stylistic choice, but I think the transition probably could have been done a little more smoothly in some spots. It's just some places where it just pulls you right out of the story. One part, though, that really kind of irked me the most is eventually he escapes from his house, and it's basically just him and B is chasing him, and he gets away from her for a minute and ends up in his neighbor's house across the street with a girl he goes to school with, who he kind of likes and she kind of likes him. And they're kind of running around hiding from her, and they duck into the bathroom, and then they have this scene where they kind of express their feelings for each other, and they kiss, and it's kind of I don't know, I guess a growing moment or a coming of age moment or whatever, but it felt shoehorned in. It was completely unnecessary, and I understand that they were, you know, poking fun at a trope because that stuff happens in all the slasher movies. There's always that one moment where everything slows down, even though, you know, you could be possibly murdered at any moment. You know, you got to slow down and confess your love to somebody or whatever. And you know, they did this here, but these kids are like 11 or 12 or something like that, and it felt unnatural and kind of shoehorned in. And once again, it just kind of pulls you out of the story. Okay, so I feel like I spent a lot of time talking about stuff I didn't like about this movie. So let me just go ahead and give you the stuff that I really did like about this movie. The jokes in this movie were good. A lot of them were well thought out and well timed, so you never take it too seriously, and that's actually a really good thing. It worked well with this movie. The gore, tons of blood, and that's pretty awesome. It doesn't really, you know, go too much deeper than just blood spray, but there is a lot of blood spray, and yeah, it's not bad. The effects for the most part seem to be practical, which if you've seen any of my videos over the past however long I've been making videos on this channel, you know that I'm a fan of practical effects over CGI almost always. I say almost because it's not entirely the case all the time. The effects in this movie seem to be mostly practical, and that's what I like. All in all, this movie is well worth watching. It's on Netflix. I guess they could have had a wider release. They probably could have sent this to theaters, but I think that it's just a little bit too weird. Maybe it's not for everyone, and I think a wide theater release probably would have hurt the film, and instead releasing it on Netflix was probably a smart move where it can reach, you know, a wide audience, and yet a lot of people aren't going to show up for something and then be angry because it wasn't what they expected. So it's a good movie. It's on Netflix. You can watch it now. It's definitely worth the watch. I would recommend it completely. So yeah, that's it for this video. Make sure you like and subscribe and hit the bell icon to make sure that you're notified whenever I upload a new video. Still going at 2 a week, and I hope to keep that momentum up for a while. All my social media links are down in the description. I actually update most of those links most of the time. Not 100% of the time because I'm lazy most of the time. If you have any questions, comments, complaints, suggestions, anything like that, leave them in the comments section down below. And until next time, I'm Dustin, this was Horroritis, and as always, keep it creepy.